welcome back to another episode of OnAir with Alumni. Today, I'm very excited because we have Surbhi Yadav with us. Surbhi graduated from IIT Delhi in 2014 after completing her MTech and BTech in Biochemical Engineering and Biotechnology, after which she worked under Professor Ambuj back in IIT Delhi, and then she went on to complete her Masters in Development Practices at UC Berkeley. She currently works in the social sector and is the founder of Sajhe Sapne and Project Basanti, which is an internationally acclaimed project. So she's involved in some very meaningful projects. And today we are going to know much more about the social sector. So a really warm welcome to Surbhi, and thank you for being here with us today. We are very glad to have you here with us.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
And to start with it, I'd like to tell our viewers more about your childhood and where you grew up, because we had talked before and I know that you come from Khardaun in Madhya Pradesh, and your story I heard, it was really interesting. So
Yeah, I should. Okay. So, childhood. I grew up in a small town in Madhya Pradesh. It's called Khargaon. And I have roots in a village called Madhopura in Bundelkhand. तो अगर overview देना चाहूँ मैं, तो I come from a family of farmers. My whole extended family is into farming. I have 4 siblings. My father just retired as a horticulturist in a district department. My mother was a homemaker, and जो भाई बहन है हम सारे engineer बन गए, है ना? So all 4 of us, disappointed for our parents' disappointment, we actually ended up in engineering and not in agriculture. I think my childhood was full of abundance. I must say that. I think it was. I did grow up as a lower middle class family, but पैसे नहीं थे पर आज़ादी बहुत सारी थी. So I think and now in retrospect, now that I've grown up and now looking back, I realize that abundance of freedom or the abundance of doing whatever you want, as long as it didn't involve money, you're allowed to do whatever you want. I think that was amazing. It shaped all 4 of us in a very distinct way. Like it was just clear that agar rasta banana hai to khud hi banao, and nobody is going to stop you as long as you're doing things under things that make sense to everyone, basically. My father was the first person in his village to actually get education and actually get a job, a paid job. So he had this major influence on us around that agar kuch kar rahe ho to wo gaon ke liye kaam aana chahiye. And I think wo bachpan se, the kahaniyan that I have heard, wo bachpan se he's like drilling inside our heads. Because I think that was his deep desire, that he wanted to do something more and more for his village, which I think he has done to a great extent, but there's always more that you can contribute. And for him, that sense of community and the sense of family was very strong. It still is. And I think उसके कारण पढ़ाई पे बहुत जोर गया हम लोगों की, और eventually I think my social interest, my work, my understanding of social sector came from how he was living his life and my mother, the way they were living their lives. But yeah, I think it was a childhood of a lot of play and fun and a lot of house chores and work, but a lot of freedom कि जो करना है करो. Benchmark was बहुत low था ना. Benchmark ये था कि अच्छा गांव में कोई और पढ़ नहीं रहा है, तुम पढ़ रहे हो. So there was no parental pressure around getting the first rank or parental pressure around कि अच्छा English आनी चाहिए. The expectation was, are you going to school or not? That's it. So we all went to school. That was a big deal for our parents. So yeah, I think I had a childhood of a lot of abundance of thinking, of doing, of trying things out. That was the childhood.
Okay, so from Khardaun to IIT Delhi, how was that? A big change from a small town to a city.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because until 12th, I didn't even know about IIT. And even when I got in, मेरे शहर में उस समय तक मेरे से पहले एक और लड़के का हुआ था IIT में. So I was like the second person and the first girl to get into IIT. And it's a very small town. It still doesn't have a railway station. उस समय तो इंटरनेट भी नहीं हुआ करता था. It was in 2009. So I didn't have access to internet as much क्योंकि phone नहीं थे. And So when I actually got in, a lot of people said, अच्छा गुड़िया का IITI में हो गया है, you know, क्योंकि IIT पता ही नहीं था बहुत लोगों को. And IIT में the way it happened, there was someone, one of my classmates in school, one of my acquaintances. She was not my close friend, but she knew me because I was in her class, and she was pretty rich, and her father wanted her to go to Kota for coaching, and he wanted to send someone who was good in studying with his daughter. And he just gave me a call. He gave me and my father a call at midnight, just before my 12th standard classes were about to begin. Like the next day was my first day of school for 12th standard, and he gave us a call and he's like, you know, I want your daughter to go with my daughter. And it was very dramatic in that sense. So I went to Kota. First day didn't get through, then decided to take a drop here, and then actually came to IIT. उस समय जब IIT आना था, तब शायद engineering के बारे में इतना जुनून नहीं था. I wanted to be a doctor actually. So for the longest time growing up, I thought either I'm going to be a doctor or an IAS officer. But engineering just happened in a sense that, oh, you need to increase your chances of getting into good colleges. But IIT Delhi or IIT anywhere, the reason I wanted to go was because I wanted to get out of Madhya Pradesh. And I still don't know where that desire came from. You know, I had not explored the world in general. I think it was between my village, Madhapura, and Khargon. Those were the two places that we would spend our time in. But the desire was कि मध्य प्रदेश से बाहर निकलना है. And that the only way you can do that is by going into college, which doesn't require a lot of money. How do you go do that? IIT is a government college. Probably parents are going to be okay with that because it's not going to be requiring a lot of money and it's a good college. So that was the driving motivation. Like even in Kota, I still think when I was studying there, and it's like, okay, study hard, Madhya Pradesh se bahar jana hai. Study hard, MP se bahar jana hai. And it happened. So I wanted to, you know, either I wanted to go to Bombay or Delhi, and thankfully Delhi happened. And voila, that was a, you know, beautiful journey, I believe. I mean, Delhi to बहुत ही मजेदार था मेरे लिए. I think campus was even amazing because it became like a mela, you know, like everything was there. I still remember first week of IIT, and there was a library. I mean, there still is a library, right? And I went in the library and I couldn't believe the number of books that were there. क्योंकि हमारे ना कस्बे में किताबें नहीं होती थी, मतलब किताबें होती थी बट पढ़ाई की होती थी. तो अगर आपको कहानी की किताब चाहिए, so there was this one tiny shop which was run by an old man near a barber shop, and that is the only place which would give us some comic books or some Champak and Nandanvan and all of that. So for me to actually enter in a library which was so full of books which you're allowed to take, oh my god, I think I had major epiphanies in IIT almost regularly. It was amazing. I think coming to Delhi, coming to campus was at least the first year was such an adrenal rush overall. There were so many things that you could access and do. And क्योंकि घर से कोई प्रेशर था नहीं, तो जो करना है वो करो, you know, do theater, do drama, do debating, do whatever, as long as you're in college. So I don't know, IIT Delhi was a big fair for me.
Okay, so now that we have talked about IIT, I would like to know कि मतलब आपने IIT से engineering खत्म की, उसके बाद like how did you know decide कि आगे क्या करना है? मतलब आपने तो social sector में काम करने का सोचा, but how did you land up on that decision?
Right. I think social sector was always, I think that was the only thing that I related the most with. So it was not that I made an active choice choosing between social sector and corporate sector or something else. It was given that I will be in the sector. And I think wo aise hua ki one was, of course, parents were a big influence, right? Like they kept on giving this message that how everyone in the village supported us so that we can come wherever we are. So you got to think of the community, right? So that sense of community was always ingrained. And I also feel that the people who have inspired me the most are people like my father, who has worked on the ground for very long and who don't do social work because of a moral obligation. They do it because that's their way of life, right? तो वो बहुत सहजता के साथ करते हैं, मतलब वो बहुत simplicity के साथ they're just doing it, right? Like without any fuss. So they don't call it social work, right? Like for them, acha, yahi to karenge aur kya karenge, right? Like my father, while he was a government officer, he ended up going well beyond his assigned duties, and he would help a lot of farmers. A lot of, like, I grew up seeing a lot of farmers coming to our house, discussing things with my father, us going to their farms, and him figuring out what can be done better. So that thing was already there, है ना? अब जब when I came to IIT, um, from Delhi to Indore, and then Indore to my home, right? It takes a lot of time to go there, and all of them are like very different landscape. तो दिल्ली का माहौल बहुत अलग है, दिल्ली की फैसिलिटीज बहुत अलग है, दिल्ली का व्यवहार बहुत अलग है. It takes 2 hours by flight to reach to Indore from Delhi, 1.5 hours actually, and then it takes another 4-5 hours to reach to my hometown. And the environment completely changes, the conversation completely changes. And abhi isi ko tum, from my town to my village, right, like Madhapura, that landscape completely changes. So when you see so many different landscapes, when you see so many different lifestyles, something goes, like something spins in your head, and you're like, acha, is social sector ke alawa aur kya karoge? Like that was a very obvious choice, even when I was in IIT. And I think in IIT, I ended up doing everything that I enjoyed. So I did participate in a lot of activities, extracurricular activities, that was just deeply joy of creation, that would just fuel joy of creation in me. So jab job lene ki bari aayi, I do remember the first day of placement, and I went there, and there was like series of my batchmates sitting in black suit, and वही skirt में बैठे हुए हैं, pants पहन के बैठे हुए हैं, and they're all looking dull. And I called my father. I said, look, ये तो नहीं हूँ मैं. I can't be this person. It feels so sad. Everyone is just looking exactly the same. Everyone's expressions are the same. Nobody is excited about it. Everyone is fearful about it. This is not what I want to do. And I think my family has been super supportive overall. And they were like, okay, you think about what is it that you want to do and figure it out. So I left the placement season. I decided that I'm going to continue my explorations in social sector. I had already done few projects in social sector while I was at IIT, both as internships, as volunteering opportunities, and I would actively look out for them. Like, what is it that I can do which is in social sector? I very out of a serendipity, I met Ambuj, and he was someone of a thought that, okay, you should take time to think about what is it that you want to do. And he gave me that support and that space that I needed. I think he supported me financially. He supported me. A lot of mentoring was there, a lot actually. I think he's still my closest mentor, one of my closest mentors. And so I took another 2-3 years. No, I think the first thing that I did was I wanted to launch my own startup, like everyone else who was doing at that point. So I started creating a product for nonprofits while also working with Ambuj. And I realized within first year that I don't know anything about the sector properly. And then I spent another 2 years reading a lot. Also was designing a course with Ambuj and Professor Rao around inclusive innovation, theory and practice. And so that was another aspect of, thinking about addressing social sector problems using technology, and what is a systemic way of thinking about it, right? That was a fun ride, actually. I mean, I struggled a lot, but I'm now looking back, I think it was one of the best periods for learning, for questioning, for critical thinking, And I think Professor Rao and Ambuj were great in pushing me that way. I don't think I was an amazing research associate, but I do think they were very patient. Yeah, and that's when I realized that I need to have a more formal education in this space, and that's when I went to Berkeley. But social sector didn't happen as an active choice. It was just I don't think anything else made sense to me, and it still doesn't. I don't think I relate to tech firms as much. I don't relate that much to corporate as much, and they are all important. You need them. It's just that I am not that person. So yeah, that's the summary of why social sector. अरे बहुत मजा आता है यार. I mean, think about it. Okay, let me pitch it. Whoever is listening, let me pitch social sector to you. Okay, in your cover letters, in your courses that you have thoroughly enjoyed, you talk a lot about problem solving, creative thinking, thinking outside the box, come to social sector, you're going to do all of that. I mean, the problems are so real, the boundary conditions are so real, the need is so real. Aao na yaar, like come and think about these problems, and there is so much joy of creation. Like you would create so much that it just gives you a kick on a regular basis. And of course it can be very hard in a lot of ways, right? But कौन सा sector hard नहीं है? Like you are spending a lot of energy in fighting the drudgery of working in a corporate. Well, here you're going to be spending a lot of energy in fighting the drudgery of, lack of resources in some places, or, lack of a market in some places in that sense. But I do feel it's a very exciting place to work. That's what my understanding is.
I think one reason that people like, it's actually working in the social sector, it's not seen as a very lucrative option. After after you've completed your 3 years, next semester, my next semester is going to be the job semester. Now everybody, in the rat race of securing the best job, or getting in the best universities. So
right.
Yeah, in this picture, then where should we fit the social sector?
I mean, figure out what is your story, right? I think what is it that you like? And you're not going to have a concrete answer like in one day. You're going to hold on to little inclinations, right? तो जो lucrative बोला ना तुमने, तो वो lucrative किसके हिसाब से lucrative है? Like who is defining that for you? Is it like defined by your seniors going the same path of consulting and banking, and is that why it is lucrative, or it is lucrative to you personally? Have you sat with the thought of, okay, what is it that I deeply value? What is it that I deeply enjoy? Like for example, in Sajhe, we have there are four team member core team, right? Like, and 3 of them are IIT Delhi alumna, right? Like all 3 of us, and all 4 of us are actually engineers. Like fourth one is also was a senior system and was a systems engineer at Infosys, and then she joined us. And I think the answer to that is that they eventually managed to question themselves that, okay, मुझे किसमें मजा आता है, या मुझे ये क्यों करना है ना? और मुझे क्या लगता है ना, आईआईटी में वो सवाल पूछने की जगह बहुत कम है. आई थिंक यू सो पैक्ड इन कलेक्टिंग योर रिज्यूमे और मेकिंग इट, लाइक पीओआर आया, फिर ये आया, कोर्स खत्म हुआ, सेमेस्टर आया, फिर इंटर्नशिप आई, लाइक यू आर सो बैक टू बैक, यू doing so much that there is space for reflection is very less. पर एक बार रुक के थोड़ा समय ले लेके सोचो तो सही. Like for example, you're doing what you see, है ना? तुमने बैंकिंग और कंसल्टिंग का रास्ता देखा है तो उसको सोचना बहुत आसान है. But did you talk to other people who are in other sectors? Actually, did you have a deeper conversation with them? Did you actually do small projects, just to get a flavor of, अच्छा इस तरीके की जर्नी भी दिख सकती है. मुझे लगता है ना, जब वो करने लग जाओगे तो आई एम नॉट सेइंग दिस जस्ट गो टू सोशल सेक्टर, डू व्हाटएवर, बट एटलीस्ट हैव सम फाउंडेशन फॉर योरसेल्फ दैट व्हाई एम आई डूइंग व्हाट एम आई डूइंग. वो सवाल पूछने की तो हिम्मत रखनी पड़ेगी, और उसका आंसर आसानी से आता नहीं है. उसके लिए तो वेट करना पड़ता है ना, उसके लिए एक्टिवली सोचना पड़ता है, रिफ्लेक्शन करना पड़ता है, एक्टिवली एडवाइस सीक आउट करनी पड़ती है, तो आएगा. बट मुझे जो लगता है दैट मोस्ट आईआईटी स्टूडेंट्स treat their degree as a liability rather than as an asset, मतलब तुम्हारे पास IIT का डिग्री है यार, like you can experiment and the cost of failure is still low. like क्या होगा, 2 साल तुमने कुछ experiment किया, it didn't work out the way you think it should have worked out, you're going to go back to the job market, and the chances of you getting a decent job is still damn high. So instead of treating your degree as a liability कि मैंने 4 साल ये कर लिया है तो मेरे को यही करना पड़ेगा, how about you treat it as an asset? Oh, my degree is my safety net, it gives me more chances to fail and try, right? And think like that. I think वो degree का pressure बहुत आता है, and it's also interesting because a lot of people, a lot of my batchmates and juniors included, they hated their time at IIT in terms of academia. They know that very actively, that, oh, we didn't learn much, and the part of the problem is part of the problem is the system, the way it is designed. but they end up, and then they go in consulting, and then they complain about consulting regularly, right? And then they end up going to IM or HBS. And I would ask them, okay, so you didn't enjoy this, you didn't enjoy this, you're following the same recipe of choosing the next decision. How? Like, why do you want to go to HBS? Why do you want to go to IIM Ahmedabad? Why? Well, what else are you going to do? अभी तो इतना कर लिया है, इतना कर लिया है, तो ये तो करना पड़ेगा ना. तो वो मतलब वो ना, जितना हम कलेक्ट करते जा रहे हैं उस पर सवाल ही नहीं उठा रहे हैं खुद के लिए. तो वो लुक्रेटिव तो होना चाहिए, पर लुक्रेटिव किसके हिसाब से. और मुझे ना, जब मैं आईआईटी में थी, so people used to talk about this thing, I'm sure they do it now as well, that hey, we should take a consulting job, especially high paying consulting job, because if you don't take it now, there is a big opportunity cost, you know, like opportunity cost hota hai, and you would lose out on the amount of salary that you start with. Fair point. I think so mine was a dual degree, right? So I saw my batchmates jinka 4 saal ka course tha, them graduating and working, and they used to live in and around Delhi, right? So we would meet, and I would see them, and I would see them complaining all the time about the job, and I was like, I don't want to be this person. So for me, the opportunity cost was, oh my god, this is my time to experiment and figure it out how not to become like this. So I was considering opportunity cost too. It was just not in the monetary sense.
So I want to know, what is Sajhe Sapne, and why did you start it?
Okay. So Sajhe Sapne basically provides end-to-end career support to women in villages. So what do I mean by end-to-end is right from getting them on board to training them for a year, getting them their first job, ensuring that we give them mentoring even after they get jobs so that they get established in a job market. We do the whole cycle. Okay. And we want to ensure that young women also have an opportunity to make careers in modern economy. So for example, management, example, education, example, journalism. Like, it is easier to imagine a young woman in village dropping out of a school and not going for a college or not going for a higher education than to imagine her as a, you know, program manager in a big place, right? And we want to change that. So jo education tumhe aur mujhe mili, higher education, right? Like the opportunities, the growth opportunities that you and I got because we went to IIT, I want to make sure that those growth opportunities are also accessible by women in villages. So we are designing all the college education that is out there in a language, in a content that is accessible to rural youth, है ना? तो जैसे जो IIT की पढ़ाई है वो बहुत सारे गांव के लोगों के लिए नहीं बनी है, और इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि वो लोग को समझ में नहीं आएगा या फिर उनमें इतनी समझ नहीं है. Of course not. तुमने चांस ही नहीं दिया ना. तुमने पढ़ाई ऐसी बना दी कि जो उनकी भाषा की नहीं है, उनकी कॉन्टेक्स्ट से नहीं है, तो कैसे कोई पार करेगा उस चीज को. So we are challenging that. So the first course that we made is on rural development and management, which is my course at Berkeley, right? Like it was development management course. The second course that we are running with two other partner organizations is math educator course. So in the first course, we are hoping that once the students go through the training with us, they will be able to take facilitator, project associate, generalist roles in social enterprises, non-profits, and can start something of their own. In case of math educator, we are hoping that they will be able to be facilitators and educators for primary math students. And this is the first year for us right now. And we are hoping that by next 2-3 years, we would have a lot more courses. I do want to launch a course in journalism. I also want to launch a course in agribusiness. There's a team member who is excited about launching a course in creative arts. So basically all the professional modern day job training that is required to grow in any job market, we want to ensure कि वो गांव की औरतों तक पहुंचना चाहिए. So that's what Sajhe is doing. We are also, Sapnewaali is part of Sajhe. So Sapnewaali is one of the products that we created at Sajhe. It's a podcast where young women in villages interview older women in villages, knowing their life story. So basically it's learning a lot of life lessons for people like you and me and others from women in villages who have done, something kick-ass. And it's a very interesting space because we meet a lot of interesting people, right? Like the recent episode was about the first female paragliding pilot from Beed, which is a village in Himachal. Then we have had people who started like the first all women Dalit newspaper in villages. So there are a lot of interesting people come in, and it's very fascinating to hear their life decisions, life stories, learn from them, learn like leadership lessons from them. So yeah, Sapnewaali is basically a podcast about women who have dreamt big and who have been able to achieve those things. And it is essentially for people like all of us who are dreaming, who are in the process of materializing their dreams. So yeah, that's Sapnewaali.
Yeah, I really recommend all of the viewers to go and listen to this podcast. I heard it on Spotify. Is it available on other platforms?
Yeah, it's available on all your usual podcast platforms. So Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, all of that is there. So if you just search for Sapnewaali, and the spelling is SAPNEWAALI. So that's the spelling. So you can look it out. Just Google it, Sapnewaali Podcast, and both the Instagram and the podcast will show up. I'm hoping that.
Okay, so next I would like to ask you that like how do you take initiative, or how do you actually start something? Because a lot of us think that we want to do something for the society. Many of us feel that maybe बाद में जाके कुछ करेंगे या फिर कुछ करना है, but taking initiative is difficult. Actually going ahead and starting something, not many people do it.
I think taking initiative blindly is difficult, but taking initiative with a purpose should be still easier. So for example, ask yourself, why is it you want to do that? मतलब क्यों मन कर रहा है? मतलब जैसे मुझे लगता है ना, social sector has become another MBA. Like पहले लोग MBA बोलते थे हम 2 साल के बाद MBA करेंगे, अब बोलते हैं हम 2 साल के बाद social sector में थोड़ा कुछ करेंगे फिर हम MBA जाएंगे, right? But nobody is asking why. Like why? क्यों करना क्यों है? Like start from there. अच्छा मेरा मन क्यों कर रहा है social sector में जाने का, है ना? What is it that I think is missing in my current life that I think social sector will be able to provide? तो सवाल तो वहां से शुरू करना पड़ेगा, that why is it that you want to do it? You might not have an answer, but that awareness is also important. That अच्छा, I don't know why is it I want to do it, but my gut says I should do it, right? और बहुत बार ये भी होता है कि you're doing it because others are doing it. And again, the moment you start doing that, it doesn't serve your purpose. Information से हम rich नहीं बनते हैं. Like everyone has same kind of information. It's the how you process the information. Like what is the knowledge that you're driving out of the same information, right? And different people derive different knowledge from same information. So just because someone else did social sector and it worked for them, doesn't mean it's going to go the same way for you. And the same thing for consulting and banking. Just because it's working out for someone else doesn't mean it's going to just by virtue of what it is, it's going to work out for you, right? तो तुम्हारे लिए तो सवाल पूछो ना, क्यों करना है? और मुझे क्या लगता है ना, this idea that we're going to help others, that doesn't last long. Okay, so there is no such thing as self-sacrificing and then doing something. क्योंकि अगर self-sacrifice कर रहे हो तो burnout हो जाओगे और फिर कर नहीं पाओगे, ठीक है? So you need to find out a better anchoring for yourself. जैसे मुझे जो लगता है मेरे लिए है, it is joy of creation. I think this place or this sector has a lot of things and boundary conditions that you're compelled to play with and resolve and solve it, right? And it demands you to be creative. It demands you to be active. You can't be passive when you're working in this sector, right? I mean, you can choose to be passive, but this sector gives you ample opportunities to be very, very active, like emotionally, creatively, physically, right? And I love that activeness. I don't want to be dull. I don't want to be stagnant. I like chasing and I like creating, right? तो अपने लिए तो वो सवाल करना पड़ेगा कि मतलब दूसरे की मदद के लिए तो कुछ नहीं करने वाले हो आप, ठीक है? वो तो over the time as a by product हो जाएगा तो हो जाएगा, but figure it out for yourself. Why am I compelled to do this? है ना? What does it make me feel about myself when I imagine myself working on certain things, So ask those questions. That's the first thing. Second, as you're asking those questions and you would be sitting with those questions and exploring is a big part of the whole process. And exploration requires patience, which something I lacked when I was probably of your age. I was very impatient. I was very restless. And Ambuj really found a way to ask me hard questions and cultivate that patience as a virtue, you know. And I remember one of the things he asked me was, 5 साल में क्या बनना चाहते हो? Give me a one line. Okay. And I told him after a lot of thinking that I want to run a very successful social enterprise. And he said, okay, what part of that sentence is the most important thing for you in life right now? Is it the running part? Is it the social part? Is it the enterprising part? Because all three of them, you can achieve them differently as well. And I think it actually, that question gave me a lot of, it attacked my ego, I would say, because I thought that my answer would have been, of course, social. Like if I had to compromise something, I would compromise on the other two, but the social sector is my thing, you know, like that's what I want. But actually it was hard to answer because I didn't want to let go running part. I didn't want to let go the enterprise part. And it made me realize that I'm obsessed with this idea about creating something of my own. And I think that was a very important realization because it gave me an idea that you can't be this self-obsessed. 2, it made me realize that I have still not understood my relationship with the social sector. है ना? तो ये सवाल आप लोगों को पूछने पड़ेंगे. Exploration के लिए you can start with volunteering, but sincere volunteering. I think IIT students have a problem of plenty. इतनी सारी चीजें करने का मन करता है कि सब कुछ करते हैं और कुछ भी नहीं करते हैं, है ना? And pick one project, do it properly. Do it with all your sincerity. Even if it's a bad project, at least when you will leave it, you will know you left it not because you didn't work well, you left it because the project didn't work out for you. Volunteering opportunities itni sari hain is desh mein. I mean, look at COVID relief right now. It's completely driven by volunteering efforts, right? So there is insane amount of volunteering opportunities. There are a lot of organizations doing amazing work. Just start from there. Pick up your own independent projects. Start small. You don't have to be all achanak se social enterprise ya mega business nahi khulna hai. Take a very specific problem statement. This is another thing. Start with a problem, not with a solution. And as obvious as it sounds, in all the experience that I have collected teaching and working in the sector, is that people do not start with problem. People start with solution. हम क्या करना चाहते हैं? हम हर गांव में टॉयलेट बनाना चाहते हैं. तो वो तो solution है ना. What is it that you're trying to solve using that? वो नहीं कोई define करता. Start from defining that. Take a one problem statement, define it properly, design a project around it, and just go through that process pretty well. Okay. You can also join a company or an organization, you know, like Sajhe, and work with them and just ask yourself, is 1-2 saal mein mera sawal kya hai? So for example, when I had gone to Berkeley, the question that I had gone there was that I knew that I want to do something in rural development. I didn't know what was it, right? Like, because rural development itself is a big umbrella, है ना? बहुत कुछ कर सकते हो उसके अंदर. So I didn't know what is my narrow interest within rural development. So that's the question I kept in my mind. And I said that I hope that in 2 years of Berkeley, I'm able to get further, deeper into this, answering this question. And I ended up attending a lot of such courses, a lot of such talks, meeting interesting people who were discussing around the same themes. And even if they were not discussing the same theme, I would take their knowledge and apply in the theme that mattered to me, right? And then within the first year of college, I realized that for me, gender issues are most important, right? Like that is something that calls out to me again and again. So I'm just going to do gender issues and rural development. That is it, right? So then ask yourself, what is the question you're carrying with yourself to answer in your next experience, you know? And it could be any experience. It could be corporate. It could be whatever experience. It could be your own personal freelancing gig that you're doing in, let's say, graphic design. पर अपने आप से सवाल तो पूछो ना. और अपॉर्चुनिटीज से कमी नहीं यार. फेलोशिप्स हैं, स्टार्टअप्स हैं, एनजीओज हैं, कुछ नहीं तो कोविड है अभी, पर कुछ नहीं तो कम से कम ट्रैवल के दौरान ही तुम्हें इतना कुछ पता पड़ जाता है, जस्ट डॉक्यूमेंटिंग व्हाट अदर पीपल आर डूइंग इन दिस सेक्टर. लाइक इट इज इंसेन अमाउंट ऑफ rich information. There are a lot of conferences and summits that happen, which are, we call it in like alternative learning spaces. बहुत प्यारी प्यारी गैदरिंग होती है when a lot of people come together, share ideas, discuss, present their work. Go and attend such conferences, go and attend such gatherings, and your mind will be just blown, like you would, like a different kind of world will open up to you. And just ask yourself what part of this world is exciting you.
I'd like to know about what other projects you are involved in. Because
Right.
because last time we had talked, you told me about a few, so it would be really nice if you could tell the audience.
Yeah, in general, Sajhe takes up all my life because it's still a very young startup, right? And it's a very chaotic space, very fast-paced space. But I do have other two projects as well, not as big as Sajhe. One is, and all my projects are in the same intersection of gender issues and rural development. One project is Project Basanti. Basanti was my mother's name, and the project is dedicated to her. So it's Project Basanti Women at Leisure. It's a multimedia repository of women and girls relaxing, enjoying their time, taking out time for themselves. It's essentially exploring time as a feminist issue. मतलब हम लोग जब लेबर की बात करते हैं या रिसोर्सेज की बात करते हैं, we talk a lot in terms of money, a lot in terms of power, but time is also a resource that is unequally distributed. Who gets to relax more? Who gets to take out time for themselves more? That's a good question to think about and notice. So yeah, I think it's the Instagram page Women at Leisure did get a lot of attention internationally and nationally. That is one project that is going on. Women at Leisure. The third project that I am involved in, along with 5 other IITD alumni, is IITD MeToo. So we did in last lockdown during the pandemic, we conducted a comprehensive survey on survivors of gender-based abuse in IIT Delhi. And we actually received a lot of responses. We did a solid and very thorough analysis, both qualitative and quantitative, talking about how gender inclusive is our campus, right? And the moment you talk about gender, you have to talk about caste and class as well. And yeah, it was a very heartbreaking but not surprising report. We did pitch it to IGS, which is IIT Delhi's gender sensitization department and club. We also pitched it to the director, Professor Rao, and told it is shared with him our concerns, shared with him our ideas on what could actually work on getting things better, and they did respond positively, I think. But I think the pandemic has taken everything, all the other things, pushed it back. Like it didn't come in the forefront the way we wanted. But we're still hopeful. We're still thinking about what is it that we want to do with that report. Do we want to make it public? Do we want to sit with it? Do we want to continue talking with the administration? But yeah, I think it was a very, very revealing and very compelling report that we did. So those are my 2 active projects apart from Sajhe.
Yeah, I think the other project, which is about casteism and gender as well, these topics need to be like talked about and aren't brought to light, or they aren't discussed enough.
I cannot emphasize enough how much IITs, and I've been part of IIT Delhi family, so I can say that very confidently that IIT Delhi really needs more conversations, more actions, more active dialogue around a lot of social issues. And they are not social, किसी बाहर की society का issue नहीं है वो. Social में हम ही है ना. So how are women treated in IIT Delhi? How are transgender people treated in IIT Delhi? How are LGBTQ folks treated in IIT Delhi? How are people from Savarna caste? What is the treatment Savarna caste people, Savarna people get? What is the treatment Bahujan and Dalit Samaj gets? Right? Like for example, the topic of reservation. We, as a community, do not know how to have a nuanced discussion on reservations. Like even today, a lot of IITD alumni, they just blatantly trash talk reservation. In fact, it's one of the most progressive policies that we have in this country, right? It's one of the very progressive affirmative actions, right? So we are not asking the right questions. We're not doing it with a lot of sensitivity. It hurts people's careers and give them trauma for good. I mean, तुम्हें भी खुद पता होगा, but if you talk to a lot of students, female students at IIT Delhi, and they would tell you that their merit is discarded because of their gender. कि अच्छा तुम तो लड़की हो तो तुम्हें तो मिल ही जाएगा. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that, And it is very serious because IIT produces future leaders in a very solid way, right? Like most of you are going to become company CEOs or CXOs in next 5 years time span, अगर तुम्हारी सोच अभी नहीं सवाल उठाए गए तो बाद में तो कैसे उठाएंगे? Because यहाँ से निकलने के बाद, this was the space where you could have had open discussions, you could have asked yourself hard questions. ये वाली जगह तो गवा दी, है ना? अभी जब बाहर निकलोगे, you're going to get more power of money and of social status. So you're not going to question yourself, right? You're only going to get more confident in your rigidity, more confident in your rigidity of the thought. Islamophobia. I think IITs have a lot of these things and they need to actually very actively talk about it. And I think students play a big role in driving those conversations. I mean, admin definitely have a big responsibility, and I do think that admin can do a lot more than what they're doing at the moment. But, even students, like, you need to actually create spaces where these dialogues are possible. And that's part of the reason why I feel IITD MeToo report that we have created, if we share that with the students, I think it will lead to a lot of interesting discussions, a lot of interesting change in dynamic also on campus at some point, I guess. I don't know when.
Yeah, I think it's not like IIT is not taking care of it. It's like it's a social issue, but we, as being part of students of IIT and IIT being such a mega institution, it should really be a place where we can make sure that these things don't happen.
Yeah, for example, I feel IIT administration really discourages political discourse, right? Like politics JNU के लिए है, IIT के लिए engineering. अरे कौन सी engineering without politics होती है? Like there is nothing that you're doing in your life which is not touched by your gender, caste, class, not even your knowledge. Like merit is like law. If you start reading about the work that thinkers are doing in this space, meritocracy is a myth, right? Like it doesn't work in India, it definitely doesn't work in the West, right? So what kind of things we are holding on to? We're not even ready to scrutinize our own thinking. Like we're so scared of doing it. We're so insecure in our thinking, तो मुझे लगता है कि बहुत स्कोप है चीजों को मजेदार करने का, चीजों को आगे बढ़ाने का, both for administration and for the students. And I'm hoping that you guys, the younger folks, you're going to take this forward. हम सवाल उठा रहे हैं, तुम सवालों को आगे लेके जाओ, है ना?
So moving on, I think this is going to be the last question which I want to ask is, you said the statement that you hate MBA. So why do you hate MBA?
That was off the record. Okay. Hate is a strong sentiment. Let me rephrase it. I'm definitely not a huge fan of MBA. Okay. I think it's very hyped up. I think that hype creates a lot of problematic behavior coming out of MBA schools. I mean, it's the same thing around IIT graduates, right? Like, itna hype hai uske around, and itna pomp and show hai uske around that, oh my God, you are going to take down the world. You're going to solve everything. You have all the skills. No, you don't. I mean, I think I'm going to speak from social sector point of view. Social sector requires a lot of humility, a lot of patience, and a lot of unlearning. And I think I can say that for any amazing thing to come out from any sector, you require all of those things. Like academia, for example, for you to have a breakthrough experiment or breakthrough insight, you need to slog for years. You need to be very humble. You need to be very, very open to gathering new knowledge. You need to be able to say, I don't know, right? I think MBA school preaches exactly opposite.
MBA school go and say, well, you are the king, you are amazing, and this is what you're going to do because you can, right? And I understand that, the use of that self-confidence pep talk, but I think it's done at an obnoxious level that it actually creates more damage than good. I have seen a lot of consultants, a lot of MBA graduates doing a lot of harm in the social sector. And it is hard to give them feedback because they just cannot get beyond their frameworks. I find this really funny that people talk a lot about thinking outside the box, and yet every solution to every problem is an app. How is that thinking outside the box? I don't know. I think I've also attended MBA classes in my university back in Berkeley, and I don't know, I was not very impressed. So I think I am not a huge fan of MBA the way it is touted. I mean, it's a decent degree, sure, if you want to take it, if you have questioned yourself enough, why is it that you want to go there and what is it that you want to take out of it? Do it, but don't take that much space. I think MBA hogs on every other degree space. It hogs on every other position of profession that are there out there. So that just irritates me. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of MBA.
Okay, so I think we'll end the talk on this note, and I'll say that this is really.
I'm saying you want to end it on a note where I'm saying that I don't like MBA. Amazing. There are so many things that I love, but yeah, I think this is fine. No, I'm just kidding.
So yeah, I want to say that this talk was really insightful, and I think it's something that in the social service sector is something that जैसे आप बोलते हो कि हम दूर से देखते रहते हैं, but you have brought it out and आपने बताया हमें, so thank you.
An interesting space to work in. I mean, if there is one thing, if people who have skipped the whole interview and they're going to just watch the last 2 minutes, here's the summary. Ask more questions to yourself and to the things around. That's all. That is going to be a guiding North Star, So, but yeah, thanks so much for being very patient with my internet and also with scheduling this call. I know we've been trying for quite some time to do this call. And today was our lucky day.